Greetings from Beijing. So it's a little bit later than we expected, but we shall start now. Dear friends, we have a group of big names of the most capable minds of architecture today in the world tonight. So it's a great honor for me to be your MC. Good evening, everyone. Of course, depending from where you are now, it's good evening or good afternoon or good morning. Select the greeting you would like. It's now 1900 GMT +8 in Beijing, and together with architects and scholars from all over the world, we are here to hold the International Forum of the Beijing Urban and Architecture Biennale 2020 pilot exhibition. The forum is sponsored by the Beijing Institute of Architecture Design, assisted by a team from Global Knowledge Leifeng. I'm Zhang Li, Dean of the School of Architecture at Tsinghua University. On behalf of the curatorial team of Beijing Urban and Architecture Biennale, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all the distinguished guests and the audience. In today's COVID pandemic and the international economic hardship, we are facing a huge challenge. Only by looking at the future in a more long-term way and moving towards the future more firmly can we ignite hope and revive ourselves. So today, our theme is positioning future, city, architecture, art, and technology. With these words as a starting point, the speakers will talk about their projections of the future, and which can help point out the way forward and enable us a more diverse perspective on the current world. The forum will be divided into two halves. Each session has 4 guests to share their views and then followed by discussions. The first half is from 1900 to 2045 in Beijing, and the second half is 2100 to 2240. During the speech, the audience can ask questions in the Q&A area. Our team would be recording these questions and then post them after the speech is given. So we will start with our first speaker today, Carlo Ratti. Carlo Ratti is an Italian architect, engineer, inventor, educator, and activist. He is a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he directs the Sensible City Laboratory and is a founding partner of the International Design Office, Carlo Ratti Associati. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlo Ratti.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Great to be with and to see all of you, so many friends from around the world here. I just wanted to share a few slides. I think, yes. I think, by the way, let me know if all works fine. I hope the connection is good enough. But so I want to start from what we've seen over the past few decades is about the integration of the natural with the artificial. That is something that can date back to cyber culture, as you see on this image, but also to many researchers, many trials from the past about how really to integrate natural and artificial starting from the human side. But today there's something quite interesting that's happening is that we got this convergence of natural and artificial through bits and atoms in our cities. And so somehow I would say that when we look at the future of architecture is if we've been exploring the natural to the artificial transition with cyber culture and so on today, we can really look at the reverse, going from the artificial, the world of cities, of buildings, of our homes, and blending them with the natural world. And really this convergence of natural and artificial, I think, it's really the key thing we have to deal with today in the Anthropocene. Is really being able, these two sides, natural to artificial, artificial to natural, are two sides of the same convergence and the future coevolution between the two worlds. And so today, for instance, technology is very important. Today, for instance, we can look at a city like this. That's the city of Lisbon, mapped using billions of data collected from the taxi network. This visualization was done by Pedro Cruz, who was in our lab at MIT. It was shown at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, in New York. But it's a way to see how, thanks to technology, we can understand the city like a living organism. And then with this data, we can also do interesting analytics. For instance, that's the same data in New York. Every dot is a pickup and a drop-off is a piece of research we started a few years ago. That's actually before Uber started Uber Pool. And then we started asking how many trips, could be combined by taxis in New York. And what you see here is between those 2 points in Manhattan, you got hundreds of thousands of trips. So again, we looked at the data, the big data, we analyzed it mathematically with this kind of methodology we call shareability networks. And what we discovered, if you find on these curves, is actually that in New York, you could take everybody to destination when they need to be there, give or take a couple of minutes, but with 40% less vehicles than what we have today. And so the interesting thing is actually that these results led to a collaboration with Uber. The first collaboration between MIT and Uber, as you might know, today Uber Pool does exactly this. Uber Pool are the same systems by Didi and Ola and Lyft and so on, by some of the similar ride-sharing system, but combining trips, that allow people to go more or less in the same direction to share a ride. So again, this was how we can use data to understand an artificial system like a living one, and then use analytics in order to redesign it, in this case from a mathematical point of view. That's some more recent work we've been doing again on the same data sets, like trying to understand the whole mobility in New York, and again, how we can redesign it. By the way, some of these papers have a lot of maths and analytics, but somehow we see them as a design paper. If you take the definition of design by Herb Simon, about design is looking not at how the world is, but how the world could be. So this is another example of some research we've been doing on the MIT campus about looking at energy in buildings, and the fact that usually we spend a lot of energy for heating or cooling spaces where there's actually nobody, with no occupancy. And from that, we started thinking, well, can we think about a different way to heat our buildings? For instance, not to heat the whole space, but to heat locally. We call this like local warming. We did a first test outside MIT, the idea that you would get this kind of bubble of heat focused on people without heating the whole space. That's the main entrance outside MIT, that's 77 Maas Ave. You would step on the carpet and have this kind of bubble of heating follow you. Some people freaked out, but most people thought it was interesting. And that actually led to a test we did. This was a few years ago at the Venice Biennale, when Alejandro and Rem's Venice Biennale, Alejandro was in the room next door, but where we actually tried to I don't know if you hear the sound, but anyway, try to test this more in an exhibition setting. I'm going to go a bit faster, but you can see the making of the exhibition, all the different elements. And so, of course, the Venice Biennale, in an exhibition, you want to make something that's very visible. But, since then, we actually built a couple of buildings that develop a similar concept inside the building. That's actually the Angeli Foundation headquarter, where heating, lighting, and cooling follow people dynamically inside the building. So you can actually control the image of the inside, both the historical part and the new part, we did this, by the way, also. This was more playing also with light in different ways with Olaf Aurelius and with this kind of transparent and flexible membrane. But again, how we can have a building where heating, lighting, and cooling respond dynamic. And again, you know, technology allows us to have a building so the real or the artificial start to behave much more like, you know, how the natural world behaves. Here's some of the images of the refurbishment of the Angeli Foundation. In other places, you know, this is an old project. It was also the Venice Biennale, where we looked at projections from one single point using a projector with a rotating mirror. It would allow from one point to project everywhere you want around it. And so what you see here is a building where every surface can become activated again, in this case, simply to digital pixels. Again, the artificial that becomes alive almost through, in this case, through interactive projections. And you see, you know, the building had to be, this is an apartment, had to be livable and great to live in also when all the projections are off. But when you turn it on, every wall can become alive through this projector at one point, as I said, with a rotating mirror projected 360. Well, that's an installation we did at Milan Design Week, where we tried to think about pixels of light that could be used to print light, both through robotics or also by humans. Again, using light and something that's traditionally in the realm of the artificial to make it like a living light, you know, these kind of free pixels, liberated pixels that then we can print either, again, with our hands or with a robot. So this to share with you, oops, sorry, we got that disconnected for a second. So this to share with you, you know, how, you know, technology can help us combine the natural and artificial in different ways. I have a couple of more projects, and I think, sorry, I don't know what's happening here, that I wanted to share with you just after this. I want to share with you that actually in which also nature itself coming into the building can help in this hybridization process. Wasan Tower in Singapore, we actually won a competition together with BIG, where here is nature entering the building in different ways. So in the core of the building is like a natural forest, a tropical forest overlooking the city. So that's hybridization by bringing nature itself inside the artificial system. And so that's in the core is this kind of green spring in between the top and the bottom of the skyscraper. There are some other parts of the building. I'm going a bit fast. But again, trying in different ways to hybridize all the different typologies that you have inside the skyscraper, including the parking garages here that can be turned into new uses later. Or this, which is a project we did a couple of years ago at the opening of Milan Design Week. And we were asked by the organizers to, you know, again, to think about the key issues facing design today. And we really wanted to look at this hybridization of natural and artificial, both from a technology point of view and also from the natural point of view itself. And so what we decided was to turn into the main square in Milan, the Piazza Duomo, to turn that into a big garden. But a garden where, thanks to getting energy from the sun and controlling it, we could actually get 4 seasons at the same time. So, you know, you would control climate and in a totally circular way, getting the energy and heating on one side and cooling on the other one, a bit like what your refrigerator does, in order to create 4 seasons all at the same time. And so, you know, I'll go a bit fast about how this was designed, but you see here that you would get the energy from the sun and use it in order to create this kind of 4 climatic zones that would create the 4 seasons. So a place, you see it here built, the Duomo, the cathedral to the left, the royal palace in Milan to the right. And as you move inside, you would go from, from the summer, a real sweaty Milanese summer, to a winter with real snow, as you see it here, with spring, with flowers and autumn. And I have a small video about So I'll stop it here. What I want to say is that, for us, the key thing we're trying to explore, both on the MIT side, at Sensible City Lab in Boston, in Singapore, and also with our design office, is how we can hybridize more, play more at the interface, especially how the world of the artificial can start following much more the logic of the natural world. Yes, some of it is what colleagues and friends around the world and in Milan about bringing nature itself closer to us. But the other thing is really how technology, the world of Internet of Things, is allowing us to somehow breathe a new life into the world of the artificial. Through data, through artificial intelligence, we can make spaces to start interacting with us a bit more like we interact with the natural world. And I think that's a key issue, I believe, today for architecture is, we're facing many crises that are really based on the disconnect between the natural and the artificial. Think about the climate crisis, think about a lot of the issues in our cities and social segregation and so on. So a lot of them seems to really relate to the disconnect. So somehow, I would see, looking at the key theme that I wanted to put on the table for the discussion today, this integration, especially from the natural blending into from the artificial blending into the natural. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlo, for this demonstration of all these wonderful concepts and also the technology, the turning architecture into 4 seasons into one day. Thank you, Carlo. We will have the Q&A sessions after all the 4 speeches of the first half. Hello, Massimiliano. Hello, Diana. Very nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure for us.
Thank you. We will move on to the second speaker of the first half, Alejandro Zaera-Polo. Alejandro Zaera-Polo is a Spanish-born American architect and founder of London and New York-based Alejandro Zaera-Polo and Maida Lugano Architecture. He is the former dean of the School of Architecture at Princeton University, and he is also a prolific theorist, widely published in different professional media. Ladies and gentlemen, Alejandro Zaera-Polo.
For your kind invitation to be part of this this forum. I am gonna try to share. Sorry, I think I need to share screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move some of this stuff away. So the presentation that I am gonna do today deals with green infrastructures. Is going to be like a journey through a series of projects which address the question of a certain type of urban technology, since this session seems to be about urban technology, which we believe that are increasingly important to contemporary cities. And I would like to go back to the statement that centered the brief for the Seoul Biennale 2017, where Carlo was also invited. Call imminent commons, where the main polemical statement was to say that the city of the near future will not have to do too much with, or the main problems in the city of the near future will not have to do with humans, but rather with non-human constituencies, and vegetation is, for example, one. The vegetation or biomass, which is part of the green infrastructure of the city, is obviously a very important one. So the polemic was driven against modern urbanism, which is fundamentally based on humanist principles that put people at the center of the discipline and deal with functions, communities, or identities. I mean, we are now victims of all these identity politics every day. And so the idea of this proposal was that in the current ecological concerns of climate change and the rise of intelligent machines, probably the city has to face a kind of post-human stage. My engagement with technologies runs also deep, and this is also related to one of the moments that Carlo cited, the Venice Biennale in 2014, in which was the origin of a project on the envelope, which is about to be published by Actar, in which what we tried to do, or the core of the project, was the realization that actually the elements, the technologies in the buildings are much more interesting than the buildings themselves, and that we suspected, it was a kind of epiphany, suspected that that is because the issues that are dealt with on the scale of the detail of the technology are much more significant than the issues that we normally deal with when practicing architecture. I mean, this is the way we used to draw facades, or we draw facades. Mullions are double lines running down a facade that explain a certain composition, rhythm, language, etc., etc. But actually, within these two lines, there is a whole world of coal bridges and drainage channels and thermal barriers and mechanical fixings and air leakage and waterproofing seals that I think are right now dealing with the most politically charged issues, which are air, water, energy, and biomass, which is maybe the technology that we are going to be dealing with. So urban environments are politicizing those elements, those natural elements, and they are dealt with by these assemblages of materials that compose architecture. So it was a kind of focus on these maybe technologies, hidden technologies of architecture. This interest in technology and science has been substantially enhanced by my partner, Maider Yaguno, who is an architect but also a scientist who specializes in urban environments, and has been crucial in this kind of radicalization of our practice toward a technological edge. And one of the things that she has been doing is to develop these mobile sensing technologies to acquire urban microclimate data to high spatiotemporal resolution through a number of kits that can be mounted on vehicles and that are basically producing images of urban environment. So we are also starting to deal with that type of concerns and how to, through AR devices, how to make those data available to a wider public. Some of them were displayed or tested for the first time in the Seoul Biennale in 2017. Let me kind of go to the core of the presentation, which is this concern with green infrastructure in cities, and let me go back to a place where many of our concerns emerge from, which is the city of Shenzhen, where we entered a competition in 2013 that was aimed to propose ideas for the development of a very large new downtown, which is now well underway, the super headquarters base, and into which we propose this idea of an eroded urbanism that came very much maybe from some of my concerns with air and flows and environment. So we envision the project as a kind of eroded fabric that we modeled using this tool, which she has constructed, joining a wind tunnel with a robot that allows us to do tests and assess volume and shape parameters of urban fabrics in order to understand how urban fabrics behave as generators of urban microclimates. And so through this tool and some CFD modeling tools, we produce this eroded fabric for the super headquarters. That I think was a very important moment in the development of all these ideas about green infrastructure, because they started to produce this image of a ruin, of a city eaten by vegetation. The vegetation was obviously aimed to produce certain microclimatic effects on the city, but the erosion, the conflict between solids and flows in the city, together with this addition of a layer of biomass, became obviously a kind of dystopian image of a city that didn't win the competition, but nevertheless it was important in triggering a whole research on this kind of convergence or marriage between vegetation and urban structures, and alongside these explorations, we also explore other ideas of urban mobility, electromobility. I mean, it's interesting to see these images back. These images were done in 2013, and there were lots of people with masks. For some reason, we were also concerned with air. We were concerned with a kind of micromobility as the future of the city, drones delivering food, things that we are slowly becoming part of, and that we think are what we call the city of the near future. We are not interested in visionary futures, we are interested in the near future, and we were interested in this, and to some degree it is already happening. These are some other explorations of similar themes that we did through other unsuccessful competitions, but nevertheless important in constructing a whole narrative and a whole set of tools to deal with these projects. This was also this was in Seoul. It was the development of the Sewun Sangha. You see the same people with masks walking around. This is Sewun Sangha. You may have seen this before. It's a megastructure built by Kim Soo-gun in the 1970s that we proposed to turn into a kind of artificial sierra linking Namsan Mountain with Yunjeon-dong Park in central Seoul. So two major urban green spaces linked by this line of buildings turned into a sierra that was obviously create certain effects. It would absorb water, it would evaporate, evapotranspirate, it would absorb particles, and it would obviously produce oxygen and absorb carbon. So these undeniable positive effects that the integration of green into infrastructure was part of this investigation that was designed by a system of cables that made the substructure, proposed the substructure of this green sierra, which was a kind of upscaling of a project that we did in Spain in La Rioja, which was basically a building covered by a vineyard. You may know that La Rioja is a major wine producing region in Spain. So in this case, the cables were making a structure that would allow plants to grow around the building, and the same thing was basically reused or redeployed in Seoul to make this artificial Sierra, in which the cables were actually not only acting as the substructure to the growth of plants, but also in order to hang bridges and run public spaces along this infrastructure. The other project was a proposal for the Gangnam intermodal station in Seoul in 2017, where the greening of the infrastructure was actually happening underground. So there was a major new transport facility being planned, and in some ways our project was about bringing daylight and fresh air, and also greenery very deep down into the transport infrastructure. And obviously many of the tools that we have been developing in order to analyze those environments became very important in making sure that these spaces were designed in order to provide these natural qualities to bring these natural qualities into the underground of the city. So again, you know, the whole dystopian, I think, world of the city covered with green is something that is very much part of this aesthetic but also ecological perspective that we are trying to develop on architecture, and that recycles some of our earlier work in which we had been making projects that already integrated, were reliant on the integration of green biomass into the architecture itself, that now has become, I mean, this is one of the latest experiments. It's a small villa in the south of Spain, shaped with balloons, but where actually the idea is that the surface is supposed to become literally part of the surrounding nature, and so this kind of aggressive biological exploration is very much part of the world that we are involved in doing now. And the final iteration of this, or the most recent iteration of these explorations, has led us to Winy in a kind of interesting paradox or parabola that starts in Shenzhen in the super headquarters campus in 2013 and ends up by a project that we have done with Tom Leather Landscape Architects jointly for the green infrastructure of this part of the city, and that we are now starting to develop. The project is obviously, like many of these projects, covering a very large infrastructure, transport infrastructure system, but also a retail project, and is very much based on the idea of turning that green axis, that park, into a campus that will be able to bring together all the companies that are going to be locating themselves in that enclave, in the super headquarters, but not only bring the companies together, but also bring citizens, bring egrets and butterflies and trees and all kinds of climatic devices that will turn this into a sophisticated environment. And so it's a kind of three-dimensional campus. It's not a flat campus like the models that we were looking at in Harvard and Princeton and other places, but is obviously a campus where the ground deforms in order to give access to elevated walkways and underground systems. A very important part of the development of the design had to do with the creation of canopies that will shade the public spaces from the very strong sun in Shenzhen, both through natural canopies, trees, but also artificial canopies that we modeled, again, using CFD models in order to locate the masses of trees and the canopies, so that the wind flows that are already there and that are running north-south between the bay and the Shenzhen mountains are enhanced while at the same time producing these shading canopies for the park that sometimes are natural, sometimes are artificial, and those that are artificial are also incorporating ventilators, fans that will renew the air when necessary. These are some of these examples of the sunken plazas that we are proposing to build over when the park falls down into the retail facilities. This is the way in which these sunken plazas are going to be lighting and bringing the air and the vegetation down to the retail level and alternating these artificial canopies with natural canopies. You can see there the fans that will potentially be activated. We are planning also to use the AC condensate of the underground infrastructure in order to produce a more sophisticated environment for the project. So this obviously one of the central pieces of this green infrastructure is the transport infrastructure underground, which we have designed with these funnels that also include a ventilator at the top and that are supposed to be constantly ventilating the underground spaces, which, I mean, and they are combined obviously with a landscape project that is supposed to be using the trees as signage for the station and to incorporate also literally some other technologies, digital technologies, onto this merging with nature, as Carlo was mentioning before. This is this internal greenhouse station that we have proposed, and this is very different from other greenhouse, other station atrium that we have built recently in Birmingham, also covered with ETFE, but obviously with an entirely different and much more, I think, interesting and exciting engagement with biomass, with vegetation, with greening, and that whose shape itself is going to operate as a kind of environmental regulator that ventilates this space. So I would like to finish just with this image that our partners who have been also looking at the ecology proposed in the coastline of the park, which is what they call the egret lawn, but this is also a coastal auditorium covered with a retractable canopy, where egrets and other birds, but also other animals, butterflies and all sorts of birds that are present in this ecology will come to populate the city of the near future. I wanted to just, I mean, I know it's probably a little bit late, but perhaps it's worth kind of looking at some of the images that we, some videos that we have produced. You see there the ventilators, gigafans mounted on tensile shading canopies covering these natural spaces, going down to the retail facilities under the park. So the idea is that actually the architecture here is primarily a way of reshaping and improving the urban microclimate by using water, by using ventilation, by using plants being embedded into the urban infrastructure. These are images of this future station underground, and these panels extracting air from the underground. I don't know whether think of, maybe we can stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alejandro, for this wonderful idea of reconnecting our cities to nature. And although we didn't quite hear what you said with the animation, but we did got the wonderful, enticing bird songs. We believe your words are as powerful as the bird songs. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll now move on to our third speakers, Amale, Andreas, and Dan Wood. Amale Andreas is the Dean of Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture Planning and Preservation. Dan Wood was the 2017 Gehry Chair at the University of Toronto Daniels School of Architecture, as well as in 2013 and 2014 Louis Kahn Chair at the Yale School of Architecture, and is currently an adjunct associate professor at Columbia GSAPP. Amale Andreas and Dan Wood are the founders of WorkArch, which was the #1 design firm in Architect Magazine's 2017 Architect 50 and the 2015 AIA NYS Firm of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, Amale and Dan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. We're very excited to be joining you from Rhode Island, actually, right now. And let me try to share my screen. I cannot share because, Alejandro, do you want to stop sharing or? So I think, I would say it's really fascinating to see both Alejandro and Carlo's work, and I'm excited to see everybody else in that. I think we have approached similar themes of architecture and landscape and the relationship between architecture, urbanism, and the countryside or the rural, but from a maybe reasserting form and reasserting architecture as the main technology and kind of embracing a sort of more lower tech approach to that integration and kind of rediscovering sort of historical means of integration. So it's kind of fascinating to see this. So it really started with our book on visionary cities that was kind of reread through an ecological lens with the kind of manifesto that today's we may have technology, but maybe we have forgotten ideas about what makes a great city and where form can sort of come in to bring those ingredients together. And so the various themes of that integration are ideas such as in-food structure, using food as a form of infrastructure that really kind of reconnects the urban, the natural, and the rural. This was our Public Farm 1 made out of cardboard tubes at PS1 MoMA in 2008, and a kind of first creation of a system that brings all these things together, including creating new forms of public space and shared experience. That took us to the series of edible schoolyards, transforming public school parking lots into organic small farms for community, for children to learn how to grow food, cook, etc., and create a kind of new connection between architecture and landscape through food, through ideas about health and systems. And this is currently a sort of collaboration we're doing with Farm One, a sort of company in New York that's developing hydroponics and very high-end interior farming, and we're kind of proposing possibilities for cities around the US and elsewhere. Sorry, I don't know why it's froze. To kind of bring, oops, sorry, no, it's, I'm gonna skip that page. Proposing the idea of integrating kind of indoor farming, hydroponics, aeroponics, etc., and inserting it in different cities around the world. These ideas also continued with, sorry, clearly having an issue here with the PPT. Do you think it's the video then?
No, I think it's these drawings.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Just get past it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go past. These ideas continued with our Beijing Horticultural Expo Master Plan, again, kind of taking the whole collaboration with the Zhupei, taking kind of very large scale sort of urban setting and bringing the kind of intersecting the urban grid and the rural grid to create new kinds of shared experiences, but also a kind of integration between the urban, the rural, and the natural. This kind of collapse is something that we're looking at now in Lebanon, where we are exploring the question of density, and it's almost the collapse of greenscape, or the mountains and the sea sort of coming together through these series of villas, 60 villas that are kind of creating a topography that kind of trickles down to the sea. And the idea is that the section is incredibly compressed, creates both a very town-like experience, but at the same time allows everyone it's kind of a new intersection of the individual and the collective, with just a section that kind of allows you direct access to the views of the sea, but also in a kind of very, very compressed way as a means to preserve the rest of the coastline. And this idea of preservation is also something that we see as enabling a kind of more sustainable approach to cities. This is a project where we kind of only kept the facade and created new apartment units behind, but again, articulating the architecture and the space to create these sort of outdoor areas that are completely recessed, that bring outside in, and that enable, you know, additions on an existing structure without, while still preserving the kind of landmark form. And collaboration, in this case with Michael Hansmeyer, to reinvent the Corinthian capital for the 21st century. This was a kind of scripting of a capital that looks historical, but is actually completely new. And so these motifs of nature and architecture are also something that is interesting to us as well. Preservation is also about kind of inserting within existing typological typologies. So in this case, this is a insertion at RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design, where we took the back of the building to create a front and a sort of contemporary post office, let's say, where all of the Amazon deliveries for the students come in to create a sort of new space for community, for encounter, and also a kind of highly flexible, transforming space for the students to come together. And this is really just kind of appropriating the parking lot. Students are called, you know, everywhere on campus to come pick up their package. The boxes are recycled because it's an art school. And so there's a kind of whole system that gets created. And we also were able to carve a performing kind of flexible space as well. We took the notion of Alejandro's envelope in a different direction. We were looking at thickened envelopes where we could reinstate space or public space. In this instance, where we were given 4 feet to cover a parking lot in Miami, and declared that that was the space for architecture, and created this vertical public promenade with a library and a kind of art gallery and a series of experiences. And at night, and you know, the kind of architecture disintegrate because of its materiality, and you start to read and register the parking garage before. This idea kind of was pushed much further for our Beirut Art Museum, where we wanted to investigate the balcony as a device, as an old device that nevertheless was incredible in negotiating inside and outside, public and private, and sort of bringing a sort of an idea of vertical gardens into the sides of the buildings. And so this Inside Out Museum creates these outdoor galleries, rooms that are gardens, but also places for sculpture, places that negotiate inside and outside and kind of bring art to Beirut and sort of integrate art and the city life and greenery along the facade of the building, which is a sort of kind of celebration of openness for the city. A sense of creating environments, and but again with a slightly less, a more maybe whimsical approach to constructing nature, and that is more graphic, more two-dimensional, and more pop. In some ways, this was our store for anthropology, where we literally allowed vines to grow around circles to kind of really indicate the artificiality, but also the playfulness. And again, just through architecture, cutting holes, and in a very simple way to bring the outside in. Some of these kind of formal strategies were also explored in the Kew Gardens Hill Library, where a very simple, again, not so complex, almost like a flattening of the architecture allowed a certain compression to bring the green roof to the front and make it really part of the facade of the building. And then again, using architecture to kind of bring the outside in from the north as well as from the south. And then finally, the idea of systems, which we're very interested in, you know, a house as a living machine, or but kind of reinventing that for today, where a house is a greenhouse, is collecting water, is mitigating temperature, but again, much more through, I would say, HVAC, much more through sort of architecture, I guess. And this is a current house that we are designing, a guest house in Arizona, a sort of collapse, a very crude collapse of a sort of thickened space for the bedrooms that negotiate temperature, and then the greenhouse for the living area. Again, many of these ideas come together for the North Boulder Public Library, which we're currently also it's starting construction soon, which is a net zero building where the air is really circulating through chimneys. The chimneys are very much expressed in the architecture. We embrace the thickened envelope, again, in this project as well to negotiate. We integrate a greenhouse and sort of bring all these ideas together to create a building that is very architectural, but also echoes with the kind of surrounding mountains of Boulder. And then finally,
I think we were supposed to switch there somewhere.
Oh, sorry, sorry. I'm very conscious of time.
This is an exhibition that we did in Bruges. Oh, okay, then you can't hear what I say. Oh, that's fine. I think it's hard to hear me over the music, judging from Alejandro's presentation, but if you hear me, it's an exhibition where we looked at our entire body of work through the lens of systems, and specifically water systems. So it goes from the scale of a sink to a shower, where we integrated plants into the shower so that the steam from the shower feeds the plants, to larger sinks, to some of the ideas about in-food structure, where water and plants combine to create food in the city, whether that's plants or fish in this case, in this aquaponic system that merges plants and fish in a kind of symbiotic relationship. To larger projects where the building itself is a kind of plumbing fixture that collects water and distributes it as a gray water system throughout, but also as a waterfall, or here in a proposal for the Guggenheim as a kind of water park sliding down the ramps to experience the art. In this room, all projects where water is a challenge in the drought affected areas or deserts. And then looking at projects that are on the ocean that specifically have to do with the relationship between water and city at the moments where the two meet. And then a room about the future of cities and the future of the planet with larger projects, such as our proposal for a new city based on shared infrastructures called Nature City that was presented at MoMA in 2014, to a view of water mining asteroids on the moon.
That's it.
Yeah, we have an extra 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Amale. Thank you so much, Dan. It's simply great, brilliant to see this refreshing ideas regarding building as a living entity, from the entirety of cities to the envelope to the systems inside buildings. And it's so refreshing and so healing to see this during the time when COVID is still around us. Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to the fourth speakers. Massimiliano Fuksas and Doriana Fuksas. Massimiliano Fuksas and Doriana Fuksas are Italian architects, obviously, and founders of Studio Fuksas. With offices in Rome, Paris, Shenzhen, and Dubai, over the past 40 years, Studio Fuksas has developed an innovative approach through a strikingly wide variety of projects, ranging from urban interventions to airports, from museums to culture centers, and spaces for music, from convention centers to offices, from interiors to design collections. Ladies and gentlemen, Massimiliano and Doriana.
Thank you for inviting us to take part in this very impressive Biennale. It's a pity that we can be with you in this horrible moment that anyway gave us the opportunity to reflect as all the others. Maybe we had the chance to assist to a group of architects that have a very impressive observation on our world. And this take me back in the past, thing that I don't like to do, but listening to all of you speaking was impossible. Don't reflect, don't remember the Biennale, our Venice Biennale in 2000. What is the mission of an architect? It's not only the one to build what clients ask, what competition ask, whatever, but it's to pay attention, to have a deep reflection on our work. And so the first one I remember was Anzoline. The Biennale before the one we did was in '98, and so was the architect like a seismograph. And the topic was very interesting. When we did the other one 2 years later, yes, was less aesthetics, more ethics. So why I'm speaking about this? Because during the 2 years we were preparing this Biennale, we had the time, of course, to work less on projects, but more in reflection and in preparing this very huge work, because it was a really huge project. And so we show what we were doing all around the world, in the mega city, in the megalopoly. We represented this. Of course, every architect did a project, a special project for this Biennale. But the most impressive things was the spontaneous architecture, the spontaneous act that all of us did. And so it was a big wall all along the Corderie dell'Arsenale in Venice, was 400 meters long and 4 meters high. And in this one were represented all the catastrophes we were doing. And so like wars, like immigration, like pollution, all the worst we could do. Those was 20 years ago. And the only thing that now I can say we didn't reflect on was the virus, because we couldn't imagine that in 2020, in 2000 at the moment, we could be stopped, frozen, without moving anymore, without traveling, without meeting other people by a virus. But at the end, if I can think about the poster, was something that we call the magma, but was not a magma. If I could say today it was a virus, because maybe it was something that you could feel. I think that if you are sensible, if you are attentive, you can feel the things before happen and do something against. So we close with the Biennale, but because also it's a very, very old. But this was only to say that all the projects we do, we always try to remember that we work for the people, for human beings. And when you think that you have to live inside what you build, inside the spaces you create, it's important, because you have to take care. Yeah, please go. This is in Beijing. It's a museum. It's under construction. It's a museum in CBD, in Central Beijing district. It's in front of a garden. Could we see the one before, please? The picture before, yeah. It's in front of a garden, and the idea was to integrate this even not big building with what he has in front, and so it is in reflecting metal in the way that you can reflect the garden, the trees, the water that is in front of this. It's in two parts, connected by ramps of staircase, red staircases. And you can go, please. Go ahead, because we go fasten. Okay. Go. You can just show, because it's important. You can see only the images is enough. Okay, this is the interiors, all the one before, please. This one is again China. I would like again to stay there. I love China. It's the country with the most energy possible in the moment. It's the youngest country. And could we see the airport, Shenzhen airport, please, after this? Okay. This is a very important for us. This is a very important project, and because I was telling that China is important for us, and I love, because this is like the model we did for the competition. To build the airport, we took 26 months, and so we couldn't have even the time to come si dice, consumare, to consume the idea. It maintains the freshness of the idea, the freshness of the when we think about how to do the project. The same thing. It's only possible in China, I think. This every piece is done is different from the other. It's done by hand. Could we go? Yeah, please go. Again. It's the same, and the outside is the same than inside. Again. These are okay. Okay, stop the one before. Okay, those the sculptures that are inside are for conditioning. That one. We always used to work with artists and with light designers, with people that does other works, not alone, because we believe that it's very important to work to share ideas with other people. But this time was not possible to have an artist, and we did. We did the sculpture alone for conditioning. And here you can see the depressions that are inside the airport. That it's a landscape, in fact. Outside represents the landscape, the small mountains that are in Shenzhen, in that same place. We passed to another Chinese project that is Wasan Tower. Maybe you can continue.
This project is in Shenzhen. It's a tower, grosso modo 300 meters high. But the most important was that we start with this to something like it's a depression, but it is not a depression. It's only to use for three times the same air conditioner. We change this. In this gap, you have all the possibility to utilize. Next one. Okay, you can see now. Of course, there is a garden on the top, there is a garden on the down. This is something that we have just finished to build. Thank you. Another one. Go on. It's very difficult to go on in this way, but anyway, we try. This is the gap in which we had the changing or the climb from inside to outside. Go on, please. This is in Paris. Archives in Paris. Go.
Next. Okay.
This is interesting because
stop.
Too much. Come back, please. This is the big sculpture inside. After the next. Oh, okay. In the middle, there is a big gap with the Gorby project. We asked to Anthony Gorby to do. This is in between the big block. The big block is archives that has to be completely closed and protected by air, sun, everything. And the other part with a lot of air, a lot of sun, a lot of light is all the place where people are walking. And the bridge connected this part with the big buildings with that. And go on, please. Again. Yeah, so you have like artists, and the sculpture is always the most important part in our work. Again. Next. This Tbilisi is for civic services. During the day and the night, this was we did this for the government, the President of the Republic, former President of the Republic in Tbilisi, and this was 11 leaves that are quite kindly deposited on these buildings. Go on. Next. These are the leaves, this is the bridge that we did in the middle of the city. And all the building is part, is not only outside that you can see the different emotion. You can see the emotion inside, that is, the leaves are really part of the building. Next. Next. This is another, just in front you can see, we have another project that is Art for Art and the Music Center. All these projects are completed, we don't want to speak too much, are always sustainability, save energy, save water, circular system. This is, of course, it is a normal for us since 20, perhaps 30 years. I don't want to speak about what we are doing every day. Go on, please. Okay, next. 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 And this is in New York. Doriana, I want to speak about this because she loves a lot to work with Giorgio. Is one of the best friends of Doriana. Can you say something?
Yes, it's New York, Fifth Avenue.
Next.
Yeah, please. Okay. Also here the staircase is it's really important because it's a very deep space, very long, and so people couldn't go till the end of the shop. And to allow people to go inside and to circulate all inside the space, we did conjunction with the staircase. Very
no, because it's, sorry. Because there is a point that we have, of course, we have elevator, lift, everything else. But we try to use the staircase like a really pedestrian, like a walking space, architectural walking space. And this was our first, and the end of the project was there. This was quite good. Thank you. Again, Doriana.
Okay. Next. This is something. It's incredible because we did the construction of the staircase in Italy, in pieces and shipped in the States because it was impossible to realize with the same price, with the same time, and the same quality in the States. And so it's done in Italy and mounted in New York. Please. Next. This is the Rome Convention Center that is in the Quarter dell'Euro, and that is very new, is one of the rationalist quarters in Rome, done in the 30s, and it's all in white travertino stone. And we did something that now the name of this is La Nuvola. And it's something that it's look, you can go on the next one, please. Okay, next. Okay, the black one is an hotel, and the white one, the glass one, the transparent glass one is the convention center. In this building there is another one. It's the floating space, the floating cloud. In the interior of the cloud there is an auditorium. Downstairs there is another big auditorium, and it's something that Rome loves so much that they call La Nuvola. It's not the name. They call the cloud, because it's something that the town keep very soon at the beginning, they decided that there was something that was always there. Maybe because it was the place in which Federico Fellini turned a movie in the same space that was empty from many, maybe from the beginning of 19th century. At the beginning there was a parking, and after this nothing else anymore. You can go, please. Please, next one. Next one. Next one. Can you change? Forse non sentono.
Non lo so.
I can't. Oh, please. Bene. Next one, please. Next. Okay, finish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Massimiliano and Doriana, and for showing us your human approach in the large-scale urban projects. Thank you very much indeed. We are now about 15 minutes behind our original schedule, so but we still have time for some questions. I do see that there are 3 questions already posted in the group chat in Zoom. We will ask the people who has asked the questions to ask the questions. Anna 160, are you there? Anna? Okay, and the organizer tells me that all the audience, they are automatically muted, so I need to read out the questions. So this is a question from Anna 160. She asks, is the question to Zaera-Polo. She asked, recently the Chengdu Green Towers became viral in the architecture media, which look exactly like your dystopian proposal about the greenery eaten the building. What can this case teach us about green infrastructure?
I actually replied already online to this question, and unfortunately I don't know these towers, so I cannot really comment on the Chengdu Towers. I mean, maybe I'm slightly disconnected. I mean, I know that there is a Chengdu Towers, but I don't see them covered in green or eaten by green. Can this tell us about infrastructure? I mean, the incorporation of green to buildings is something that many people have been working on. I mean, Stefano Boeri, for example, there's a number of people who have tried it and have. So I think everybody should be doing, because it has many advantages. But for me, the most interesting part of this little journey that I try to explain in the presentation was more about what are the aesthetic implications of getting buildings covered in green. And I mean that this is where I think that the ideas of the ruin or the buildings overgrown by green are most interesting, and I think they also emerge at a time where, as I try to explain, we are moving to a city that where I think that the humans will slowly lose currency to other other species, perhaps, to other types of population, robots or birds or other animals. And I think that in some ways the little statement that I was trying to make is that there are opportunities where this engagement of architecture with nature can actually produce very deliberate effects that move them away from the more conventional images of green cities. For me, the question is, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for architects? What does it mean for design? How can we take advantage of this?
Thank you, Alejandro. I think I will prioritize questions with a specific panelist to ask the questions for our specific guests. And here is one for Amale. Dear Amale, I'm so excited to all the practices of public farm, and I'm wondering which will be more suitable for cities, decentralized urban farming or centralized urban farming in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think we can no longer afford either or conditions. I think in a way it has to be both. A number of years ago, MVRDV and us made a comparison in terms of how to feed Manhattan. And we looked at a kind of horizontal, taking over Newark, taking over a huge region around Manhattan to feed locally. And then MVRDV looked at stacking, almost doubling the city vertically to feed the city. And so, I think it can't be one or the other. In the age of COVID, one of the reasons why this firm we're working on, Farm One, is gaining momentum beyond the sort of very elite growing of certain herbs is that all of the kind of supply chain of food and are breaking down, and so people are realizing that it's going to become sort of almost economically viable to have food in cities, and whether it's taking over existing lots or especially as car automation comes in and etc. But at the same time, I don't think we can in any way assume that we'll be able to feed the planet by simply integrating farms with cities. I think you're going to continue to need large scale farming. Ideally, we would move away from industrial farming towards more intensive sort of organic farming. But so it's really going to be bits and pieces and combinations. And for us as architects, what's exciting is how does that create new kinds of shared spaces and experiences and new kinds of typologies and a sense of community. Food really brings people together across ages and a kind of network of people. So.
But Brian, could I add a little bit?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Actually, the following two questions are to you, Carlo.
Oh, no, then I shouldn't. But I want to say, I think Amale is totally right. I mean, actually, I wanted to add something more, physical. If you were to use, based on physics, if you were to look just at the amount of energy that falls on Manhattan, that amount is not enough for feeding. Somehow the food we eat is energy coming from the sun. We use, plants and animals to transform it into something that we can eat, and then we collect that energy. And in that process, there's a lot of inefficiencies, but that amount of energy is not enough to grow enough food to feed Manhattan. So the footprint of Manhattan is much bigger. Of course, you could actually do skyscrapers like I think Winy proposed, where you do a lot of artificial lighting and you grow a lot of stuff. But if you do artificial lighting, and if you want to do it in a sustainable way, you take energy from the sun, then you get you turn it into power, electric power, and then you power LEDs, and then you grow with LEDs. And if you do that, you add 2 additional steps in the chain, which make it much less efficient. So in a nutshell, I just want to reinforce what Amale was saying, that you know, this is more about us connecting with something that's so important for us. It's part of our nature. It's part of, we are part of nature, and you know, connecting with the seasons and in things growing is very important to who we are. Is what my colleague at Harvard, E.O. Wilson, would call biophilia. It's part of our innate love for nature. But you know, we shouldn't think that tomorrow we will just grow food next to home.
So until our bodies learn to photosynthesize, Carlo. And 2 questions to you, Carlo. And the first one actually has been asked by a number of from our audience, a number of people from our audience. The question is about, can you talk a little bit on Uber? And because as we know, under COVID, Uber is facing a pretty hard time. And not only they are now reserved to one person, which is one driver and one guest, but also there are now partitions separating the driver and the guest.
Totally.
What do you think?
Totally. Thanks for asking that. You know, I would say I'll be very quick, but if you think about the impact of COVID, I think we certainly have an intermediate phase while we need to coexist and live with the virus, and that's where we are now. And you know, and certainly we need to social distance. But you know, if you're thinking about our cities, we need to take the long view. We need to look at the long term. And you know, and if you look at the past, you see that cities have gone through many, many pandemics in the past, even more disruptive ones. Think about Venice. The beautiful city of Venice that was mentioned before, in the 14th century, loses 60%, 60 of its population because of the Black Death, because of the plague, because of the pandemic at the time. And despite that, you know, in the following centuries, we kept on enjoying Venice, on crowding its theaters and narrow streets and living next to each other. So somehow I think, you know, you're totally right. In the intermediate term, I guess it will, you know, at one point this will stop. I don't know if it's going to be in 6, 12, 18 months or more. But then I think our cities will go back to how they've always been. And so, and I think, you know, as designers, we need to look at both dimensions. But if we think about the long term, if you think about the city overall and urban planning, that's really the long term, the long view. And so it's about looking at things that will stay after COVID is gone. By the way, just very quickly, this doesn't mean that, you know, some things like social distancing will go back to what it was before, but many other things will not go back. And for instance, the way we organize our offices, the way we live from home, the way we commute, most likely those will be disrupted forever. But still, you know, that's a long view, which is, I think, today the most important one.
And the second question to you, Carlo, is about what the role digital technology can play in promoting citizens' participation in new urban public spaces.
Yeah, and that's another great point. You know, in this hybridization of the natural and the artificial, again, you know, I think what I found very beautiful about all the presentations is that somehow we are all struggling with the same question and looking at it from different angles. So I think, you know, there's also something interesting here. Maybe, you know, following the Biennale, the Beijing Biennale, we should come together more and try to share a lot of these different learnings we've accumulated by looking at this from different angles. But if you look at this, you know, something we've been looking at more is about how digital can help us really breathe in a new life in the world of the artificial. And of course, one of the most poetic ways to do it is actually to use the digital to engage people more. It's about, you know, the natural and the artificial through humans helping to, through more participation, helping to shape our cities and our buildings. So there's certainly a lot of potential there. I'll mention just a couple of projects. There's a project we are working on right now. It's still speculative with Dan Rosegaard, the Dutch artist, who's a great friend. You know, that's about how we can do some kind of crowdsourcing in order to do a collective urban project where everybody will contribute, digital and physically, a small piece. In those pieces will create a coherent whole in the end. You know, Dan and I were inspired by a famous church in Naples where every stone in the church has 2 letters, of the people who sculpted actually that piece of stone, who carved that piece of stone. And so that's one example, and there's a few others. We've been working with an office in Boston called the New Urban Mechanics Office at the City of Boston, which, the idea of the New Urban Mechanics is to make people like mechanics of the city. And with them, we've been working with different ways to really have more participation thanks to digital networks in order, again, to blend human input with the artificial of the city in new ways.
Thank you, Carlo, for your answers, and our thanks to Wang Yu for asking these questions. The next question is to Fuksas. It's about Shenzhen Airport. It has been asked by an anonymous listener, and he or she is saying that as soon as the airport got constructed, it went viral on internet, and everyone was shocked by its modern shape and aesthetic value, and also the choice of material and the design of the ceiling in the interior. And this particular person says that he or she sees some kind of similarity between Le Corbusier's Brise Soleil construction and the Shenzhen airport. So can you comment on the relationship between your work, which is the airport, and Le Corbusier's? Thank you. I've been told by the organizer that unfortunately Massimiliano and Doriana are offline now, probably due to some errors in connection, so they can't answer the question now. I guess no other guest can answer this question neither. So let's move on to the other questions. Another question to Amale and Dan is also asked by Yu Wang. She says, I think the thick envelope concept is very interesting. It kind of blurred the boundary of public and private. What do you think of the future relation between the public and the private realm? And how will that change our public landscape?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking all these good questions. I think what in the future we can, as cities become denser and population increases, one thing that we think is that our notion of public space is very two-dimensional. I think, as Alejandro mentioned also, we can't continue to simply occupy just the ground with public space. And I think we see these thickened envelope projects as a way of experimenting with a more vertical public space to duplicate or replicate over again that space of the ground up through the building, which is in a way related to Corbusier. So we can answer that with his
and to Asian cities.
Yeah, and Asian cities in general, where this experimentation with verticality has been going on for some time. But particularly in the private realm, I think it'll be interesting to see how we can integrate truly public space, not just privatized public space, vertically in the cities of the future.
That would have to come through policy.
Thank you. Next question is from Jenny, is to Carlo. I like your idea of the creation of 4 seasons in one day. We want to create a natural feeling in our indoor space as well, such as using the technology to create a natural sunlight and using airflow to create a wind breeze. Can you talk a bit more of how to create blend nature into the building in different interesting ways?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking this, and you're right. You know, somehow we see many buildings. You know, try to. And I've shown you also some of our work that tries to just bring nature inside the building, but you know, there's much more complexity to nature. And so I want to mention a couple of things. One is a study we've been doing for Rockefeller Center in New York, actually looking at using a special type of LEDs. They're called sun-like LEDs, and basically sun-like LEDs emit with the same spectrum of the sun. You know, one of the problems is that a lot of the LEDs we're using, a lot of the LEDs also used in electronics, in our computer screen, in our iPhone screens, and so on. They emit with different frequencies. The light is much more blue, so the spectrum is tilted one side, and that has been related to many of the issues we have today, including, you know, less melatonin and lack of sleep and so on. So somehow, you know, this is has been a speculative study about together with Rockefeller Center, about how we can use sun-like LEDs and bring, like, you know, like real light from the sun underground in the Rockefeller Center. And the same thing, we have another project, is not public yet. We've been working on the new Vibram store. As you know, Vibram is one of the world's leading producers of soul. But, you know, they're very poetic in the way they do them. I think their motto for the company is a bit, you know, your contact point to the planet. And there we've been working really about recreating different type of environment, mountainous environment in the store itself, with different granulometry of stone that goes from very, very small to very large. But also in that case about cleaning the air with electrostatic filters and reproducing the molecules that you find in the mountains. So basically it's mountain air that ends up in the center of Milan or New York. So what I want to say is that, yes, you know, you're absolutely right. Somehow that's where technology becomes important in this, is certainly you can start by bringing nature inside the building, but then, you know, nature comes together with a much richer network of interactions with, you know, as you said, with lighting and the quality of air and the composition and the molecules and the ecosystem. And somehow it's a big endeavor of how you work across all these dimensions.
Thank you, Carlo. And I think we have less than 10 minutes left. So let's conclude with this very important question from David Blankel. It's about the emergency we are facing. It's a question to everyone. So may I kindly request that each of you answer the question within 1 minute. And the question is, I see most of the projects are focused on how to take advantage of natural resources more than usual, besides the news of the week of how many time we have to live before climate changes is inevitable. How do you think this will affect future architects or future graduates in the architectural field? Would it be something that will be the new context that we will have to work with? Try to solve habitability, trying to save our resources. So probably we can start with Amale and Dan.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is already, climate change is already ground zero for everything that we do as architects. And you know, it's, we have to approach it through form and design. We have to approach it through technology, but we also, I think, increasingly have to approach it through politics and questions of environmental justice and you know, all of these things that I think as architects we find ourselves often at the intersection of all these forces, and how we negotiate these forces is a little bit the burden and the responsibility that we have moving forward.
And I think just quickly, you know, the environmental movement also is changing and is recognizing that, you know, the nature did not survive its relationship with humans, and that we actually need to change the way we think about that relationship in order to ensure our mutual survival. You know, and I think that this question of between artificial and nature, unfortunately, will become so much more important because nature just is not making it on its own. So,
thank you. Carlo.
Yeah, you know, I think it was Buckminster Fuller, the great Buckminster Fuller, who said that, you know, architecture is in between utopia and oblivion. And I think if we don't, you know, engage with those issues, you know, those crucial issues first, you know, climate change, then this is going to be oblivion. But if we are able to engage with it, and I think what we should do is really put that at the core of our thinking. And I'm not 100% on in sync this time with Paola Antonelli. You might have seen Paola from Roma, but she did a beautiful, curated a beautiful exhibition at Milan Triennale last year, which was Broken Nature. And her starting point was somehow, you know, there's not much more we can do. And so design should be something similar to palliative care. Well, I refuse to accept it. I refuse to accept that design should be palliative care. I think, you know, the design should go back to, as we mentioned before, you know, Herb Simon's definition on looking at how the world could be. And then we got many, many tools at our disposal to really see how architecture, design, planning can help us still get out of this, this mess. And I think that means both looking at our cities. Cities are responsible for 75% of energy consumption, 80% of CO2 emissions, but also engaging architecture with big projects of geoengineering. Can we actually start looking at, you know, so if things were to get out of control, can we find a last kind of a, can we find some geoengineering solutions that could help us, you know, as an escape route? And so I think that that should be really the focus of all of our efforts in the coming years.
Thank you. Zaera-Polo. Alejandro. Alejandro, you are muted. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question, and it's obvious. I mean, in some ways, I go back to the statement with which I started the presentation, which was the statement of the Seoul Biennale. In the most critical questions that city need to answer in the near future do not have to do so much with community or identity or lifestyle. It has to do with the engagement with constituencies that are not human, that are nature, that are the earth, that are regimes of energy, and you know, as Carlo just mentioned, this is a very low-lying fruit. So you can spend zillions of dollars investigating new kerosene fuel to reduce the carbon emissions of airplanes, but you know, 70% of energy is consumed in buildings and cities. 48% of carbon emissions are consumed in buildings and cities. If we are able to do a minimal change to the way we practice, we may have an incredible impact on the world. And so, in that sense, I mean, I would like to say that architecture has gone through a kind of a retrograde phase recently, looking back at style, looking back at maybe the history of architecture, etc., etc. I think I would like to be a little bit more polemical and say that those attitudes are not going to go very far, and the proof of that is history itself. I mean, I think that we are now in a time not dissimilar to the one modernists lived, in which there was a huge defacing between the evolution of technologies and the evolution of architecture, and there is a well-known quarrel between modernist architects and the academicists, and so the modernists were engaging with hygienism, were engaging with new modes of industrial production, were engaging with a number of technologies that had grown on the side of architecture, and that they try to get involved with this, while other architects were actually looking, architects like Tony Garnier. I mean, the question that I think we are facing is, do we want to be Tony Garnier or do we want to be Le Corbusier? I certainly want to be Le Corbusier. I don't want to be Tony Garnier. That's a kind of lesson.
Go ahead.
That's all. I think that's what I wanted to say. That if we look back at history, looking back at the history of architecture is not going to get us anywhere. Is to look at actually the technologies that are surrounding architecture, that are going to propel us to a truly effective and significant practice of architecture.
Thank you, Alejandro. I think we've had pretty intensive 1 hour and a half, and the things we've learned through the 1 hour and a half is truly precious. It's rightly this kind of great architectural thinking and optimism that keeps architecture, the profession, and the discipline great. So our deepest thanks to the speakers of our first half of this forum: Carlo, Alejandro, Amale and Dan, Massimiliano and Doriana. Unfortunately, we are out of time at the moment. And we can't do a physical round of applause to show our appreciation, but I believe everyone is showing their gratitude in their own place, and our sense of gratefulness is true and genuine. Thank you so much to the speakers. The first half of this forum is now concluded. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you all. See you soon in person.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, let's meet soon.
Thank you, Alejandro. Goodbye.
北京最大的特点是骨子里的包容。
La ciudad de Pekín, la ciudad de Pekín es una ciudad capital, es una ciudad administrativa, es una ciudad centro, es un centro político, de hecho, más que las razones de la existencia de Pekín son más políticas que incluso que económicas, porque
大国的首都，同时呢，它的这个世界上的影响力、政治、经济、文化的地位，同时呢，它也有这个近现代高速发展，现在进入高质量发展的阶段。
也就是说，北京这座城市啊，它具有自己相当鲜明的中国美学风格，尤其突出的体现为雄强、自豪。 这些非常博大的一种美学的情怀又有非常厚实的文化含量。
There's really the dynamism of growth and an optimism and a kind of risk-taking, adventurism, entrepreneurship, and the idea of great projects.
And we're now looking at a city that's a 3,000-year-old history. That was the largest city in the world during the Renaissance. They've become documents of their connection to a global world.
There is no country with that population that will bear the responsibility of growth and urbanization.
I think Beijing is a very vibrant city with an amazing artistic scene.
北京の面白さはグリッドなんだけど多様性があって一つのそのマス目の中にはもう他と全然違う別世界がある。
It's much energetic. I mean, when you are in China, you can really feel the energy that comes. It's it's a very young nation. A lot of people young than us that works from 20. You don't see all those old people that don't want to leave their places.
它肯定不是最好看的，它也不是最取悦你的，但是好像待一段时间之后，你还觉得它挺有意思的。你换个地儿，你还不习惯。
城市其实是承载人的生活的一个地方。如果这个生活是一个活泼的、开朗的、健康的这种城市的话，那它应该是充满了生活的乐趣。
对我来说，一个不断的变化的城市是充满 乐趣的。
它为什么美？我觉得是因为它有一种冲突，所有这些两极之间的张力特别有趣，特别吸引人，也提供了好多可能性。
cierto modo, a mí me hubiera gustado encontrar un Beijing en el que lo que uno piensa que una cultura tan poderosa como la China o como la de Oriente Lejano hubiera sido capaz de configurar la ciudad.
Visto que fuera nuestra experiencia china, si fuera un cuerpo, Beijing sería el corazón. El corazón, la ciudad prohibida, el eje, es el corazón histórico como este sol, el corazón cultural, el corazón de la memoria de lo que fue China, que de alguna manera se ha perdido y pensamos que tiene que recuperarse también.
有很多这个需要探讨的话题，无论是对旧城的保护，还是对这个未来的探索，可能都是值得社会去关注。
It's constantly changing, and like other Chinese cities, the scale of Chinese urbanization is very hard to comprehend, I think.
骨格がすごく大きくて、で昔からの大きなスケール感の街が作られていて、それが未だにこう街の雰囲気をしっかり支えているかな。
道幅も広くてなかなかこう歩いて渡るだけでも大変なような印象があるし。
By looking over the city, you are outside the city. You are not in the streets of the city.
What is there, what remains of the old city, is still what I enjoy most when I go and visit Beijing.
Kind of how easily people talk in the street with each other, how seemingly almost familiar they are with each other, how little distance there is.
I find the old parts inspire me a lot, and but I never realized I could love grey. The courtyard houses themselves taught me about making a heart to a place.
它本身它就是动态，那么我们有什么依据去抓住一个静态的东西，就让历史定格在那里头。
人们要发展，要生活，所以它要不断的变化，所以它既是一个古都，呈现出历史的叠加的厚重，又是一个充满活力的现代的城市。
成百万上千万的居民服务的城市，但是更多的还要为这些老百姓服务。
You know, if you're really interested in history and in the future together, you can kind of basically make all those moments coexist.
Let's say how to make a city on the edge of such a kind of vast territory of mountains that is on the foot of the mountains. That feeling could be. What would that mean? Could we enlarge the fresh air from there? Can we make more forestry that's connected to that? Can we use it to introduce that landscape with perspectives, with views, with building around the views, etc.?
I think if you have a biennale that does not allow architects to show off, you lose the plot because it's a show. It's like having a circus with no elephants, you know. It might be humane, but it's going to be a boring circus. I think you have to take advantage of the ambition of individuals to show their stuff off.
未来发展，我希望还是能够在首都这么一个疏朗大气、服务好中央的这么一个大的背景之下，形成一个能够具有多样化，能够在世界的这个文化。 世界的多样化的发展里面有一席之地的这么一个城市。
You have to get rid of the corporate superstructure and bring in what should be involved in a social state like China, a cultural idea.
这是一个大格局的调整使我们过去。 这个近100年来，北京的格局出现了变化所以我也觉得这个是一个挺值得期待的。